And we'll probably have some people joining us soon. Just a reminder, if everyone can turn off your mics, but please have your video on if you'd like. Love to see faces. And then all questions, if you just want to put them in the chat. And I know Chris gets to them periodically throughout the show and is on top of it. So thank you everybody for joining today for Empanadas.
All right. Thanks. Welcome everybody to the vegan empanadas. Classically lots of butter in this crispy dough, but we're going to do a fun hack that makes your life easier and a little bit healthier, a little bit less cholesterol, a little bit more healthy oils. I'm actually going to use some coconut oil today. The recipe you guys all did mention olive oil, but you can use pretty much any oil you want. I really like the coconut oil, particularly with when I'm doing vegetable ones, because the dough is just a little bit easier to work with. It can absorb a little bit more moisture. When I use olive oil, the dough is a bit soft, and I feel like the moisture can sometimes break through the dough. It's not going to really be that bad at the end of the day, but it's nice to have a dough that sort of works for the dish. And so a harder oil, any oil that's solid at room temperature, is going to be better for a more moist filling. Drier fillings, you can go with a wetter oil or an oil that's more liquid at room temperature, something like olive oil or canola even, which will be like liquid even in the fridge. Anyways, we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to make the dough and we're going to get it chilling so it can be ready to go. So we're starting with flour, good old all-purpose flour. You can use pretty much any flour you want, honestly. We're not really working on developing any amount of gluten here. I wouldn't probably use bread flour because gluten isn't necessarily our friend in this situation. But you could use like whole wheat flour, no problem. A lot of the times whole wheat flour has problems because it doesn't develop gluten very well, but we don't really care about our gluten in this. Gluten is going to be a little bit helpful when we're going to form them, just because it's going to help us to stretch the dough around our filling better. But we're not going to be actively trying to make it. We're not kneading this for any amount of time. It's literally just getting mixed together and put in the fridge. In fact, avoiding gluten is very helpful for getting a nice flaky dough. Classically, when people make pie dough, they'll usually use like a full pastry flour, which is very low, sort of the opposite end from bread flour on the gluten spectrum. So I'm just I'm dipping my cup in here and then shaking them level. And they don't have to be perfect. You can see that one's a little bit low. It's going to be fine. And I feel like I was a little light there, so I'm just going to go back and grab a little more flour. This, more than any of my other dough recipes, is probably the most sort of just like let it ride. You can lower the oil. You could even lower the water if you want, though I wouldn't too much. It just kind of works. It all sort of comes together. Oh yeah, let me just show you too. I always got to show you. I got mise en place all together. I got all the things I'm going to knead over there on my stove. Got the oven on. All my veggies and dry goods here for making my filling and such. Tried to get all my bowls together. Any utensil I might need, my masher for the potatoes. It's all out on the counter, ready to go. It's just going to make my life easy. I'm never really going to have to leave this corner unless I want to. So I got some flour in there, baking powder, not baking soda. Baking powder is going to be important for this because we are going to be letting it rest in the fridge for a little bit to get cold. And so we want a double act. Baking soda is really useful if you're going to be baking it pretty much immediately. But baking powder is going to sort of help it rise twice, especially since we're going to be messing with it. So baking powder is really good for pretty much most applications. Baking soda has really got, it's sort of more of a mix and go, mix and bake kind of thing, like a biscuit or something like that. And that's what's in, self-rising flour, for instance, and that's really useful for making biscuits. All right, so we've got the baking powder mixed in there. The recipe calls for salt. I skip it. I've just been skipping the salt in pretty much all my recipes lately, but feel free, please put it in there. Don't skip it just because I skipped it. I just skip it because the doctor told me to. So I got some coconut oil here. I put this in the microwave just to melt it so it's liquid because it is solid at room temperature. I'm going to measure out 3/4 cups here. I might be a little short. I'm just going to top it off with some olive oil. It's kind of tough to measure solid coconut oil, but let's try and get a spatula on this and see if we actually did okay. I think I'm actually really, really close. Awesome. Just going to top it off with just a little bit more olive oil. It'll be nice too. It'll add a little bit extra flavor, which could be fun. So you got 3/4 cups of oil. You got your flour in a bowl. You're going to take some chopsticks. I like to use chopsticks. You can just use your fingers if you want, but this helps keep everything nice and clean. And you're just going to spread them out like this, and you're going to use them to stir up the flour as you slowly drizzle in your oil. What this is going to do is it's going to sort of make little globules of oil that are surrounded by flour. And what's going to happen is that flour is going to start to absorb the oil, But what it's going to be useful for later is when we add water to this mixture, the water is not going to like the oil. So it's going to avoid hydrating those little balls of flour that we've made. And in doing so, we're going to create a matrix that has flour and oil parts of, water and oil parts of the flour in it. And that's going to be very, very similar to what you'd do if you were cutting butter into the dough. You're cutting butter in, you're making little bits of butter that are covered with flour. Right now, we're making our little bits of butter. We're just kind of hacking it by just pouring the oil into the flour. And that's going to actually work out really good. I'll show you what this looks like in just a second here once I get it broken up. But there's little tiny nuggets of oil caked in flour in there. And we're going to just put our water in here. And what's going to happen, like I said, is we're going to have a nice little bit of oil. And the reason you want those little bits of oil is that's what makes the really nice flaky texture of the dough. When you go to bake it, the water is going to evaporate out and would create just essentially what would be a cracker. But the oil itself won't evaporate, but the water that's in the oil or that's in the around the oil will evaporate, and it'll create little pockets, and that's what gets you that sort of flaky texture. Butter is classically much better at this because there's just more water content in the butter. But we're trying to be healthy today, and you're going to find that this is actually going to be really, really good anyway. So you can see you've got nice crumbly dough. That's all. Each one of these is just a little like piece of oil that's now that's sort of wrapped in flour. So we're going to take that, and we're going to add a cup of warm water. You can just get this right out of the tap, turn it up to hot, and just wait till it gets about a little bit warmer than your room temperature. Now, normally you'd make pie dough with cold water, and this is almost kind of like hearsay, but part of the reason we're using warm water here is that it's going to make our life easier. I'm all about making things easier. Dough, I avoided doughs for like the longest time because they're just so hard to work with. Pie dough particularly, you got to use like ice water, and the measurements are crazy, and if everything's not cold, it just kind of turns into a mess. So we're using warm water here because what it's going to do, it's going to relax that dough a little bit. It's going to actually stop some of the gluten developing. And what that's going to help us with later is when we're rolling them out, they're not going to be so elastic. They will stretch fine because there will be gluten, but the strands won't be as long, won't be as developed. And what that means for us is that we're going to have a lot easier time working with it. We're going to be able to fill them a lot easier. We're going to be able to get to the fun part, which is eating these a lot faster. And so that's what it's all about. Make life easy. So I've got this dough's going to look really, really wet, like almost too wet. And then all of a sudden it's just kind of come together. And that's part of the sort of hydrophobic tendencies of the oil. The flour for a moment there thinks that it's overhydrated, and then it realizes, oh, no, I've got two different liquids here that don't want to mix. And so you actually end up with a pretty nice dough that is very, very easy to handle. And so once it gets kind of tough to mix, it looks like that. You're going to just go ahead and just take the dough right off your chopsticks. Should come off really easy because there's a lot of oil in this dough, which makes it very hard for it to stick. And then we're just going to take some dry hands here, and we're going to sort of pound this into the bowl, make sure we absorb all the dry ingredients that are stuck to the bottom. And then eventually we're going to take it out. We're just going to do a little knead just to get it all together. And then we're going to wrap it up, put it in the fridge, and let that oil resolidify. And when that oil resolidifies, you're going to see there's going to be little tiny bits of white streaked in our dough. And that's that coconut oil. That's what's going to get us a really, really nice flaky crust when we do bake these later. So I'm just pushing this into the bottom, then flipping it. Every time I flip it like that, I'm just pushing more of that dry ingredients into the bottom, trying to get it all. Actually, I'm just going to tilt you guys down a little bit, just so you might be able to see a little bit better. I'll try and like tilt the bowl. There we go. And then I'm just flipping it, folding it, and doing just a little knead. I don't actually want to knead this to the point where I'm developing lots of gluten. Like I said earlier, we just want everything to get incorporated nice and well so it can hydrate while we leave it in the fridge. And that is about that. So got a nice little piece of dough, and you can already kind of see that it's nice and flaky. Like there's I can feel a piece of coconut oil right here already, just like I would if it was butter. And that is exactly what we're looking for. So I'm just going to form a nice little ball here, push it flat. This will help it cool down faster in the fridge, so we can start working with it as soon as possible. And I'm just going to go ahead and wrap this up. Nice tight wrap. If this was an olive oil dough, if you are using olive oil, the oil will actually kind of seep out of the dough a little bit. Just so make sure you do wrap it really nice, or at least put it in a bowl or something, because if it seeps out, it can kind of make a mess in your fridge. It's actually plenty. It's still very easy to work with when it's like that. It's just that it's very greasy. So yeah, so make sure it's wrapped really well. Put it somewhere safe in your fridge. You'll be good to go. All right, I got mine in here right now. Beautiful. All right, so next thing on our list, we want to get our potatoes cooking. We want to get them nice and soft because we're going to mash them for this recipe. A lot of times empanadas will have whole cube potatoes in there, but we're going to cook the crap out of these so they get nice and mashed. They're actually going to work as our binder. And so to speed up that process, I'm just going to cut these potatoes into little planks here. And you want them to be kind of thin. This is like a cut I would do if I was doing breakfast potatoes, for instance. See, you just kind of cut them into little planks. And then we're going to put that flat part of that plank down on our cutting board. And we're going to cut sticks, planks, sticks, and cubes. Just the classic sort of way to get things nice and small and potentially the same size, which is really kind of what we're going for here. Means they're all going to cook the same temperature. And if I was doing breakfast potatoes, I'd want them the same size just because it looks nice. And then we're just going to take these and just sort of stack them up. And it doesn't have to be perfect because, again, we are boiling these. So I'm just going to turn my water on here. I preheated my water just because I wanted to make sure these got really, really well cooked. But you don't have to do that, especially for something like a mashed potatoes. You kind of want some of that starch to get out of it. I'm not too worried about it for this because we are going to be using it as a binding agent, so that starch might be helpful. But you know, overly starchy potatoes can be a little awkward the day after, particularly. So a lot of times you start with cold water, so some of that starch can sort of seep its way out. If you put potatoes into a hot water, you kind of cook the outside, and it actually keeps the rest of the starch right in there, which is great for, like, you know, breakfast potatoes or something like that. Just blanching potatoes, great for French fries as well. Is so because you want to trap that starch in there, so you get a really nice crispy potato. But I've just got this on full bore. Going to boil those until they are mashable, and I'm just going to mash them. I'm not going to put any butter or anything in there. Again, we are doing a vegan recipe here, but also I just don't think it's necessary. They're plenty starchy on their own. Any liquid we put in there, any flavoring we put in there, is just going to help to sort of break them apart. And we want them to stay together. That's kind of the whole point. So those are in there. They're ready. Got them rocking. I think. Is this on? Yeah, it's on. Okay, great. Perfect. So we are already just absolutely slaying it here. Just going as fast as possible. So we're going to jump right into our filling. And I'm just going to prep all of the ingredients. I got some cremini mushrooms here, or baby portobellos, depending. I found these like 2 massive ones, which is just insane. Very excited about that. I'm always sitting there just like weighing the containers, seeing which one has more in it. I'm a very frugal shopper. I can't stop myself. So I got my mushrooms out here, my garlic. We're going to start with garlic and green onions first, but I just figured I'd get the mushrooms out just so I could look at them. They're so pretty. So let's actually do the garlic and green onions. So with a garlic bulb like this, you want to take the tip end, put it face down, roots in the air. You're just going to kind of want to push on it with your hand. It's going to break all apart into little individual bulbs. We're going to use this whole thing. The recipe says 6 cloves. This is, you know, 12, maybe 7. There's some pretty big cloves in here, so it's actually not breaking the rules that badly. Granted, I made the rules, so right, I'm allowed to break them. So we're just going to crush this up. We are going to be cutting this garlic very, very small. So I'm not worried about crushing it. If I was trying to do like slices for like a nice like Italian tomato sauce where I wanted people to be able to see the pieces of garlic and avoid them if they wanted to. I don't know why you want to avoid garlic, but then I'd probably, you know, just try and keep these whole so I could slice them. But we're not doing that. We want them crushed up. They're going to be a part of our filling. And they're mainly a flavoring agent. We're not really looking to have them be a visible part of the dish. And so we are going to cut them very small. And that's just the general sort of philosophy. Anytime you're cutting up a vegetable, think about what it's doing in the dish. Is it flavoring the dish? Is it going to be something that is going to be visible? You want it to be visible. Like if I'm using a green pepper, I'm usually going to cut it a lot smaller than if I'm using a red pepper, because a red pepper, I'll usually do like strips because I want it to be visible. I want people to see it. I want people to be like, ooh, that stir fry looks so good. There's red peppers in it. Green peppers just look like brown mush once you cook them. They're not really very visually pleasing unless you're using them in something raw, like so just a counterpoint to that, if I'm doing like a pineapple salsa or something, and I want to use, jalapenos or some green pepper in there, that I would want to cut really nice and well, and maybe a little bit bigger, because that is a nice contrast to the colors I'm using. With a pineapple salsa, I'd definitely be having some yellows. And so that green would sort of pop out. But if I'm cooking with it, that green is just going to fade. So it becomes more of a flavoring agent at that point, as opposed to a sort of visual agent of the dish. So just think about it when you're cutting things, and that can help you sort of inform your decisions on how to cut things. And if you only have one way to cut things, just cut things that way and just disregard literally everything I just said, because it doesn't matter. It's almost all visual. At the end of the day, If you put it all in the same pot, it's going to taste good if you use the right ingredients and the right amount of seasoning. There's just, there's ways you can do it just a little better if you so desire. All right, let's get these green onions. So just going to take the roots off here, and we're going to cut this whole thing all the way up to the ends. First, I'm going to chop this garlic because it needs to get diced. Oh yeah. So just doing a rough chop over the top, just get it smaller. What this also does is sort of helps it to pile up. Once it's in a nice pile, it's easier to sort of chop pieces at a time. I also apparently forgot a whole bunch of pieces of skin in there. So now it's easier to run my knife over the top. Get this nice and small. You can always just buy minced garlic too. You don't have to do this yourself. I just really love the smell and the whole just like movement of breaking down a bulb and chopping it all up and then eating the entire thing. It just feels so nice to me. But this would probably be like one small jar of garlic. So you can just toss that whole thing in there. Why not? I also feel that fresh garlic like this, it tends to brown better. Most of the stuff you get in the jars is sitting in water. So when you go to brown it, it has to evaporate that water, and by that point the garlic's kind of already cooked. So I really like fresh just because it just browns better. And brown garlic adds a really nice flavor component, especially to something like this where we're dealing with vegan ingredients and we don't have meat to sort of fall back on for our umami flavor or our tasty flavor, our savory. Browning our garlic is going to add that in and sort of let us sort of get back on the flavor wagon, even though we are we're not using sort of the easy way out, which is in general animal protein. Animal protein just has a particular flavor element, and these darker mushrooms are going to help as well. We're really going to be working on adding lots of that sort of deep flavor that really people like. It's called the tasty flavor for a reason. So we got our garlic here. I'll put that in as soon as my oil gets hot. In fact, I think it is ready to go right now. Perfect. Just spread that out so it gets nice surface area with the pan, and it already smells absolutely amazing. And we're just going to slice these nice and thin. And it's okay that they're in discs. You don't have to cut them lengthwise or anything like that. They're going to get really soft and they're going to start to break down. And when we go to fill them, they're not going to be in the way at all. Our big sort of physical pieces in this dish, the things you're going to see when you break open the empanada, are going to be the spinach and the corn and the mushrooms. That's sort of our go-to here. Those are going to be the things that you look at and go, "Ooh, yeah, that's what this is made out of." All this other stuff is just flavoring, which is why we're cutting it smaller and cooking it first so that it breaks down more. Okay, awesome. So garlic's already starting to brown. That's beautiful. Turn on my fan. You guys can't hear, just put it in the chat, but usually the fan doesn't get picked up because my computer is very smart. All right, so we're getting these green onions in there. Get them a little bit of color as well. Start chopping up our mushrooms. Spinach is already cooked. I did end up getting frozen spinach, so that's going in like way last. But the mushrooms do want to get in there and get a chance to sort of work down right now. If you were putting salt in this dish, if you wanted to, now would be a good time to put some in. After the mushrooms is a good time to put some in, and then at the end, once you get a chance to taste it and figure things out, those are the 3 times I usually add salt. Is with my aromatics or my flavoring agents. With my soft-bodied vegetables, ones that have a lot of water in them, adding salt will help that water to release and cook down. And then always at the end, you want to taste and see what things are like. So these mushrooms, I'm just going to slice them. And then I'm going to, we're basically doing the exact same thing that we did with the potatoes. I'm slicing and then sticking, and then from there, chopping. It's not going to be quite as like mechanical as it was with the potatoes, just because these are smaller. It's going to probably be a lot more sort of just over the top chopping. That's okay. This is just a good place to start. And I always like to cut down into the top of the mushroom as opposed to trying to cut from the bottom up. I just find that they sort of tend to just stay better this way. And it's just a more solid surface to chop on. If I go and try and chop this way, I'm like, I could cut this way and then I hit the stem and maybe my knife slips to the side of the stem or something. If I cut from the top, the stem is held right in there. I feel like I can be a little bit more aggressive, makes things easy. So I'm just going to turn these to the side now and then come along and just cut them the other way. Mushrooms are going to chop down, like cut down, or rather cook down like a lot. So you don't have to chop them super small because they're going to cook into a very small amount of mushrooms already. Oh yeah. Just show you, we got some nice ground of garlic. I hope you can see that. Garlic and scallions. The scallions, you got a little bit of black and brown around the edges. Perfect. Even if you do get them a little crispy, that's okay. Once you add the moisture in here from the mushrooms, they're all going to start to release that browning and create a really nice flavor that's going to get infused in everything. So just going to run my knife over these one more time. Get them kind of chunked up, small as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect. And that is that. And that's a whole pound of mushrooms, or sorry, a whole 8 ounces of mushrooms. And that's just going to cook down into almost nothing. So we're just going to toss that right in the pan. Heat on. Again, if I was putting salt in this dish, this is when I would put some more in. And I would just leave the pan just like that. Mushrooms on top, a little bit of salt on top. I'd let that hang out until I heard sort of started to smell the mushrooms. Let the bottom sort of get a little brown. We'll stir them, let them sit again, and then they'll probably be done. So awesome. We're just going to keep chugging along, making things happen. This is really great deal because you can make the dough like in the morning, come home, make your filling in about like 20 minutes and make empanadas like that. You got dinner in sometimes less than an hour. So I got my spinach here. I'm going to dump that out, see what it looks like. I actually left it in the fridge just to see if it would thaw, and it's still a little frozen, which is kind of crazy. But this looks like pretty good spinach. You know, I'm used to like those blocks of spinach. I actually couldn't find a block of spinach, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, it's in the bag section. That was kind of cool. But this looks absolutely delicious. It looks very well cooked. It's not like it's overcooked. Like those, like, I think it's green giant cubes. So I can smell the mushrooms now. So I'm just gonna give those a little stir. Don't want my garlic to burn either. It's down there at the bottom. So, oh yeah. And I also am on high with my heat. If you guys have a lower temperature, like you can go to medium. Cook this over medium instead. It'll give the mushrooms some more time to develop flavor. And you won't have to worry about burning things as much. But I just, you know how it is. YOLO over here. I only have one speed. Awesome. Okay, so I'm just chopping up this spinach just to make sure that it's a nice size. I don't want really big pieces. It's going to make it hard to yeah, that's good. It's going to make it hard to fill later. Awesome. And we'll just get our corn measured out here. I only have one size of corn. If you're making this in the summer, you can obviously just buy fresh corn. That's just like really amazing. But this frozen corn is going to have to do. And we're just putting, how much are we putting here? Half a cup, I think. Whoops, I put a little too much. Oh no. Okay, the corn is really actually, it's going to be one of our physical ingredients, but it's actually kind of working as a flavoring ingredient. It's going to be very sweet, and it's going to help to sort of bring together some of the flavors, especially since I'm using coconut oil in the dough tonight. It's going to almost make this feel like a little sweet and savory, which is going to be really nice. When you're cooking with low salt, which I tend to do a lot, the more types of flavors you can add to your dish, the better you're going to have, the sort of better your taste buds are going to experience things. If you have all of the different flavors, sour, salty, sweet, what's the other one? Bitter and umami or tasty, your tongue is going to come alive. It's going to open up. It's not going to need salt to wake it up. Salt is one of those things that wakes your tongue up and makes everything tasty. So we want a little bit of salt, but the way we're going to sort of get around the fact that we're not using tons of salt is we're going to add lots of flavors. That's why I'm putting the corn in there. Not only is it really nice and everybody loves good corn, but it's a little sweet, which is going to sort of wake our taste buds up, and it's going to make it so we're not going to miss that salt as much. And again, that's the decision on my part. You can still put salt in there, and it's just going to taste even better. All right, so these mushrooms are nice and wilted down. They're starting to get a little bit of brown. So I'm going to put this spinach in here. Start letting that sort of cook down. And this is where I'm going to put my herbs in as well. I'm going to get my thyme in there. Oh yeah. This looks great already. I'm excited for when the mashed potatoes get in there. It's actually pretty tacky already. I don't even know if it needed the mashed potatoes. I mean, they're going to be delicious though, so well worth it. Everybody likes a good starch. Okay, awesome. So that's in there. Let's go ahead and get some thyme in there. A tablespoon of thyme. I like to use a lot of thyme. Thyme is a really another great sort of herb that adds a really nice flavor. It's kind of hard to like pin down what thyme really tastes like. It just tastes good, in my opinion. So that's kind of a it adds another really good flavoring agent, especially since we're having to deal sort of with for me again low salt. And I keep going back to that, but it's bargaining. Somebody once told me it was, and I'm okay with that. I'll bargain for my health. So I get some fresh nutmeg here, which is nice. To keep it in the jar, and you can just use your microplane and just shave it in. So I'm just going to shave some nutmeg in there as well. And it's about a half teaspoon. So I don't know. I'll use maybe like a quarter of what I had left of this thing. And nutmeg is a classically a sweet dish ingredient. You know, you probably used to it in something like a pie or maybe some hot chocolate or hot toddy or something like that. But I really like it with dark greens, particularly. I think its flavor just really adds a nice sort of dynamic that goes really well with darker greens specifically. Those being our sort of bitter ingredient, in this case, the spinach. This is going to help sort of tie them into the corn and that sweetness we were talking about earlier. And it's going to just all kind of come together. All right, so let's get this stirred up and going. Make sure I got everything. Mushrooms in, spinach in, garlic in, onions in, corn right here, about to go in. Got my potatoes cooked. Thyme and nutmeg is in. So all I need now is salt and pepper. I'm going to skip the salt as per mentioned, but I'm going to put a good healthy amount of pepper in there. I'll probably put about a teaspoon, maybe tablespoon. Just as much as I usually just kind of grind this thing until there's pepper all over the top, and then I stir it in. I love pepper. I just absolutely, it's so nice and flavorful. Even like the whole corns. There's some dishes. My friend does a really good adobo sauce, for instance, which is just like a vinegary, savory sauce, and they put whole peppercorns in there and cook it for like a couple hours. The peppercorns kind of plump up, and you can eat them whole. And it's just such a brain like experience. You're like, wait a minute, I'm eating whole peppercorns, but they've been cooked so long they've lost a lot of their spiciness, and they actually are just like a really, really fabulous addition to the dish, especially with a little bit of rice. So I'm gonna pop my corn in here now, ready to go. All right, we are just flipping along. I'm very excited about that, which is good because honestly, they're gonna have to cook for a little bit, and I still got to roll out all of our dough. So I think my potatoes are probably done. And there's not really any moisture in the bottom of my pan, which is good. I want this to be pretty dry. Again, I'm going to be adding some mashed potatoes, which are going to be pretty moist. And then you generally don't want too much moisture when you're doing filled things like this or dumplings. They tend to just make the dough not so hot. So as you can see, that's what we're looking like for filling right now. You've got a good amount of corn, enough that you can see it, but not so much that it's sort of the main star of the dish. And let's check our taters over here. Perfect. Okay, taters are done. This will strain and mash. You want to make sure you try and shake off as much of that water as you can from the taters. And I'm gonna just mash them right in my dough bowl here. Reuse my dish and make my job easier later. And again, I just let those potatoes go crazy. Like they're definitely overcooked, quote unquote, even for mashed potatoes. But I'm not concerned with that because I'm literally just using them as a binder. So I'm just gonna mash them until they turn into it's almost a little like dry. Like as you start to mash them, the heat will evaporate some of the excess moisture because you're adding more surface area for that to happen. It'll actually kind of dry out and it'll become almost like a powder. I mean, it's not actually a powder. It's definitely still pretty wet, but it'll be. You can see it. It looks. Hopefully, you can see that. It looks more like like a potato starch kind of thing. That's gonna be perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. I'm just gonna go ahead and toss my spinach and mushrooms and everything else right on in there. Oh yeah. And there's a high chance that this is too much filling. That's okay. It's really, really good in rice. You can just make more dough, but you don't want to have not enough filling. That's just the saddest thing ever when you have leftover dough and you're like, what am I going to do with this? So we're making sure we have more than enough filling because that's rather have excess than too little. So we're just going to stir this up and I'll show you guys what it looks like when it's all done. And we're going to get it cool, nice and cool. Oh my God, that smells so good. Now, again, I haven't tasted this yet and I'm going to taste it before I put it in the fridge. But I can smell that it's very well seasoned. I can smell the nutmeg, smell the black pepper. I know what I put in there with the thyme. And so I feel pretty comfortable that this is going to be okay. But you should always be tasting your things. And you can see now too, it's like, it like wants to form a ball, right? Like that's like not going anywhere. Whereas before it was kind of falling apart. And so that's why we put those mashed potatoes in there. It's going to make our job so much easier when we go to fill this because it's just going to stick together really well. It's not going to try and escape out. But let's give it a little shot here, see what it tastes like. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, it's so good. And it would be more poppy, sure, with a little bit of salt, but like I don't miss it at all. That tastes so good. A little bit of spice from that black pepper. So what I'm doing is just spreading this all around the outside of the bowl, which increases our surface area. And then I'm going to cut some lines in there, which is going to help to make sure it all cools nice and evenly. I'm going to pop this in the fridge to start cooling it down. I'm going to grab my dough so we can roll out our pieces. One thing that really makes this job a lot easier, if you roll out all of your dough at once and then fill all at once, save yourself a whole bunch of time. So I got my nice dough and it's a lot harder than it was before, but it's still workable and pliable. And I'll show you real quick, really cool, the sort of, what's it called? What did I call it? The sort of matrix that you're going to see here. It's really, really cool. Let me just clean up my space because I'm going to be working right on the table now. Okay, beautiful. So dough unwrapping. So hopefully you can see this. I get it nice and close. You can see there's little like strands of white moving through the dough. That's that coconut oil we put in there. So that's going to help make it actually nice and flaky when we go into this later. So recipe calls for making 24. I am just going to make 12 today. I'm going to make really big ones. It's going to make it a lot easier to fill them, and it's also going to make it so I don't have to sit here and make 24 for you all. Not that I won't do that, but you know, it just, I know you guys have time. So we're going to do the exact same process though here. We're going to cut this into 4. And then once we cut it into 4, we are going to do the exact same thing we would do for 12. I'm just going to skip one cut. And so that will make it into, or rather 12 instead of 24. So I made 4, which means each one of these quarters is going to give us 3. So I basically just need to form this into something that resembles a cube that is, you know, I can sort of tell which side is which, and then I'll cut that in thirds. And again, these are going to be big, and that's a-okay. I'm here for big. Empanadas is going to make the filling really easy. And it's going to make these more of like a meal, you know. Empanadas classically, you'll eat maybe a couple of them. Maybe you get, you know, a couple different flavors at one time. It's more sort of a grazing food. You know, you can make meals out of it, definitely. That becomes more like a hand pie. So I'm just portioning these all out, and then we'll roll them out as well. And you can weigh these if you want, like if you want to be exact about it, but it's not going to matter. No one's going to complain that, you know, Jerry's empanada is twice as big as Larry's. Just give Larry an extra one, it'll be fine. And you know, that's kind of the fun of this, is, or even better, just let people make their own. Great. So we've got 12 nice balls of dough here. This dough is not going to dry out quite as bad as like some other doughs would, because it's already, you know, kind of a fairly dry dough, and we're actually trying to make it very flaky. So I'm not too worried about it drying out, but I don't want it to get too crumbly. It's just going to make our job harder. So I am going to just cover it a little bit as we start to form these up. I'm just going to stack them once I'm done. So first things first, I do want to warm it up a little bit because it was in the fridge. And this is just going to make it a lot easier to work with without it cracking. So I sort of just work it between my hands, form a nice little dough ball. And then from there, I'm going to go right on the counter. We're going to smush it down. And then we're just going to start rolling and turning. You're looking to get something about round. It doesn't have to be perfect. And you can actually see the, hopefully you guys can see the oil piece is even better now. The little dots in there, all the pieces of oil that we put in there. I think I just need a little bit of flour right here. Got a little bit of water on my table just from cutting and stuff. So a little bit of flour will help this not to stick. This usually doesn't stick at all just because it's pretty heavy oil based dough. And again, these are going to be pretty big. These are definitely bigger than the ones that I would normally make, or if you happen to be at the library for the in-person program, bigger than those ones. They're big boys, but that means I'm going to be able to put a whole bunch of filling in there, fold this over, and get just like a really, really nice looking empanada. So just go ahead and start layering these stinkers up. Now would be a great time for questions if everybody has them. We are definitely getting to the point where I'm going to be putting these in the oven, and then we're going to make a really delicious sauce that's going to be great for dipping with them. Just a good sauce to use in general. I love nut-based sauces. All right, so again, form a little round ball, and then you're going to sort of press that down and then try and form something slightly resembling a round disc. And again, I didn't weigh these, so these are all going to be different sizes. That's part of the fun. And you just start stacking them up. And again, this is like the working it like that. You'd never do that with a butter-based dough because you'd be melting the butter with your hands. That's why I just really, really love this oil dough. You can just kind of like misbehave. And I do aim to misbehave, in the words of famous Malcolm Reynolds. I don't know if anybody watches Firefly, but I may happen to be a nerd, and I absolutely love that show. So Malcolm Reynolds, very much misbehaving. He would love this recipe, I'm sure. Again, just a little 90-degree turn every time you roll it out. That's going to help you get a somewhat circular disc for filling. It doesn't have to be as thin as I'm going to. If you go a little thicker, you're going to have just have less filling to be able to put in there. I'm a filling crazed person. I love to just put as much as I possibly can in there. Another reason why I'm making these so big is I just usually the bigger they are, the more filling you can put in. Empanadas particularly, the smaller you make them, you find that if you make them too small, you literally can't even fit any filling in there because they won't close. It's just not as stretchy as a dough, as something like a bao or a pot sticker. And so if you're trying to make them small, you don't have a lot of leeway as far as what you're filling in them. You know, if you're doing really, really small empanadas, you'd probably be putting something solid in there to fill them. Maybe like a little piece of fruit or something like that, as opposed to trying to do you know, what we have. And that way it wouldn't slip out. You could just kind of literally put it in there, wrap the dough around, and you're done. Or a piece of chocolate or something that could be good. All right, sweet. Let's keep rocking. Over and over. Get a little flour in here. It's getting all sticky again. Yeah, I really like these just because they don't require a lot of flour. A lot of doughs really just, you don't use flour when you're working with them, and they just fall apart and they stick to everything. It's squishy. And this dough is just a lot of fun to use. I can almost like feel how flaky it's going to be already as I'm sort of mixing it up, just because you can feel the little bits of protected oil in there, and it's just it's really nice. I never thought I would be so in love with an empanada dough. It tends to be kind of one of, not the harder ones, but you know, any butter-based dough, just it's a lot of work, a lot of paying attention and stuff. And I'm definitely more of a chaos cook, so this hits me right in the happy place. Oh yeah, these are gonna be good. And again, because we use that warm water, we didn't need it too much earlier. These are keeping their shape after I make them. If we had developed too much gluten, they'd sort of shrink back down, and that would just not be ideal, you know, for us. We want them to be nice and big and easy to fill. And that surface area that I made on the filling is going to be really important here, because they are they're really going to need it's going to need to be cool. You know, that filling wants to be cool to go in here, or else it's going to start to sort of melt our oil and work against us all that hard work we did to make a sort of fake butter dough. Okay, great. Let's get a little more flour in here. And so a lot of times you would glaze an empanada with with eggs, right? But we are going to skip that entirely. We're not even going to put any glaze on here. You can make up a paprika glaze with just paprika and water. But honestly, I think they cook just fine. One of the cool things about the oil is they actually kind of act more like they're frying, as opposed to, you don't get quite as a flaky dough as you would with butter. But because we're dealing with oil here, less of the water evaporates, and you actually end up sort of frying the dough as it bakes. And so they're going to get pretty golden on their own. They're not going to be perfectly golden, but the paprika is really just a visual thing. You put it in there, the paprika itself gets brown. And so it looks like it got really brown, but it didn't really get that much more brown. I mean, that's kind of similar with an egg wash does too. It's the proteins in the egg that are coloring. But these are going to be tasty. They're a little bit pale. That's okay. Again, that's just a visual thing. The flavor is not going to be affected. I think the paprika, while absolutely delicious and tasty, is not really necessary. A necessary part of this process. But feel free to do it if you want at home. It's pretty easy. You just do a 2-to-1 paprika to water. And then if you have a brush, you just brush it over the top before you put them in the oven. Or you can even just dip them in there if you're making smaller ones and you have a lot. But again, we're skipping that today just for ease of use and to prove that you don't have to do it. You don't have to wash your dough to make it look pretty or to make it be absolutely and utterly delicious. Beautiful. So there is our nice stack of 12 super empanadas. And let's go take a look and see what our filling's feeling like. Hoping that it's nice and cool and we just get right to it. I'm gonna get my sheet pans ready to go. Got a little bit more time to cool down. I got some pan spray finally, which is nice. Gonna be really useful for next month, which is maybe a little bit of a hint at what we might be cooking. I won't tell you exactly though. I'm just gonna pan spray these pans. Might not need both of them, but I'm gonna get them both ready. And again, it's oil-based though, so it's shouldn't stick, but you don't want it to stick. If it sticks, especially with these bigger ones, it's just gonna explode out the bottom. It's not gonna be happy at all. All right, let's get our filling. Still a little bit warm, but not too bad. Should be good enough for filling these without getting too much trouble. It's a little steamy, but not so bad. And you could have made this gone faster by putting it in the freezer or on a sheet tray. Just increasing surface area is usually good, but it's cold enough that I can touch it with my hands, which is all you really need. All right, so I've got 12. So I'm going to sort of try and spread this out and then cut it up into 12-ish equal pieces. I don't know if I actually have too much filling. I might have by making these bigger made too much space. I don't think so. I think we're gonna be perfect. All right, great. So we're gonna cut that into quarters and then each quarter into thirds. And that should be great. Yeah, that looks perfect. Awesome. Get our first little bit of filling here. Where are you gonna go? You're gonna go right over here. Get over there. Get your hands nice and dry, and let's start rocking. All right, first empanada. Got our bit of filling there right in the center. Oh, that looks perfect. That looks just like the right amount. And then what you do is you literally you take this end, you put it together with that end, and then you sort of just smush it together. This dough is really nice too. Unlike a butter dough, it sort of seals itself. You don't need water. I really love it. It's just so much easier than I ever would have thought before. And now there's a couple different things you can do here. You can just be done. You can fork it right now, or if you want to, you get fancy. You can fold over the edges. I'm only going to do this once. You fold over the edges and you make sort of like a nice like ridge, I guess, and then you fork that instead. And that's going to be that's going to be sort of more classic and more tasty. You get kind of like a nice edge, and then you take that, you flip it over, and when you push your fork down, you want to push down and then pull out while pushing down. If you try and lift up, you're going to undo the seal you just made. So push down, pull out while pushing down, and that is going to get you a very nice sealed empanada, right? So I'm not going to do that fold over technique for the other ones. I'm just going to go to town. Let's see, yeah, there we go, perfect. I'm just going to go to town and fold them over. Let's see, this is a smaller one right here, so we'll use a little bit smaller filling. You just want that filling right in the center, just like you're filling a dumpling. And then you just sort of fold it over, seal it up. And again, this is so much easier with bigger ones. With smaller ones, you're using less filling. It can be a little bit harder. And then for me, easy way, I just am here to eat. I get the seal on and then I immediately fork it. And that's it. We done. You see, I don't know if you saw that, but I lifted up there and this one kind of came undone. And there you go. You can fork the other side if you want, but like, again, I'm more of like an eater. I'm not really, I will make something pretty if I'm trying, but most of the time I'm just trying to get that food in my belly. So that's what we're doing right now. I also just want to get these in the oven so you guys can see what the finished product looks like. All right, so cool. We're gonna get these guys right there. Beautiful. And we're just gonna fork them down. Boop, boop, boop. Okay, these are looking so good. I'm excited. I'm like really excited to eat these. That one might have been a little overfull. I think I lost my counting method, but that's okay. We'll see how it works. If I have one extra, that it's so it goes, or one unfilled. We will make do. If you have a part that like doesn't feel like it's sealing well, go right ahead and just fold it over like I told you earlier. That's gonna help it to seal. Make sure it doesn't come out when we bake it. But you know, they don't have to be pretty. I'm a pretty good dumpling maker. I'm a pretty good bao maker, but I have been trying to make empanadas more pretty. I just don't think it's possible. Not for me. Something's like broken in my brain when it comes to empanadas. Maybe I just need somebody who's like better at making them to show me what I'm doing wrong. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of things I'm doing wrong. But honestly, I'm not that invested in them being pretty. These more than anything else in my kitchen, I just want them to taste good and be easy. And I had got to say, this is the ultimate recipe for taste good and easy. I'm going to try and fit 8 on this first one because I don't think I'm going to be able to fit 6 on the other one. So again, you're just filling them up, closing them up, and then sealing them up. Pretty regular business over here. And while they're in the oven, we'll make our sauce. And that's just a really good technique to always do if you're cooking, especially if you're doing larger batch cooking, is try and set it up so that you can, you're the times when you're waiting, you're able to do something with that time and use it for your benefit. And so what we're going to be doing is while we're waiting, we're going to make a sauce. And if you didn't make a sauce, while you were waiting, you could watch TV. It doesn't have to be kitchen work, but try and plan your sort of your cooking around the time you're going to have. And for me, of course, that becomes very, very evident because I try and do this in an hour, which we're doing okay, not great on these do need to get in the oven, which I'm going to get these ones in the oven right now so we can start seeing what they look like. But if you're trying to keep things, so I got those right there. I'm going to pop them in the oven, crank this stinker up. We're doing 425, but you can go higher if you want. Our filling is cooked. So unlike like an apple turnover or something where you might be trying to cook the filling, we're just really trying to cook the dough. So a high temperature is not going to hurt us that much. It's just going to make things a little bit faster. All right, great. So I'm just going to fill the last 5 of these, pop them in the oven as well, and then I'll show you guys how to make that sauce. And by the time I'm done with the sauce, we will have fresh empanadas out of the oven. Let me set a timer. It's going to take about 20 minutes, which I know I'm going like a little bit over, but so it goes. Hopefully you guys don't mind hanging out with me for a little bit longer, even though I'm basically torturing you by making delicious food that you won't get a chance to eat. Sorry. It's more incentive to make it yourself. Now you have the recipe, you have the skills, you got to see me do it. Oh, rock, no questions either. Nice. We are really just making good time. Boop. Okay. Getting there. What you doing, cat? My new cat's playing with the paper. Apparently he likes eating paper. Not sure who told him that was a good idea, but definitely wasn't me, I promise. Right, nice and filled. Seal them up. Two more and we're golden. Get this filling spread out over here. Nice and evenly. That was about perfect, actually. I think if you were using smaller ones, you might have a little bit of extra filling left over just because you can't really shove them quite as full. But this is actually feels like it's just around the right amount, which is nice. All right. Get it. And sometimes I'm just messy. Like, I don't know what I just did wrong with this one, but you just kind of, if you get messy, just kind of like squidge it together, fold it over a couple times if you have to, push harder, get it a little bit warmer. And then they come in with the fork. The fork solves all. Okay, last one. The first one we made, last one to be sealed. I think this one had a little too much flour on it, so it's having troubles being sealed. That's okay. I'm doing a little fold over method on this one. I'm gonna get them squished down. Perfect. All right, pop that in the oven. We will see you all in a bit. Okay, cool. I'm just gonna do a quick little cleanup here, and then we're gonna get that sauce done. And then we will just be hanging, waiting for these guys to come out of the oven. Okay, so for the sauce, I need a lime. I need my cutting board back. Cilantro, lime, cashews, a little bit of water, a little bit of oil. Keep it simple. So I've got a blender for this. If you have like a smaller blender, like I know there's like a NutriBullet, I think is what it is called. That would be kind of perfect for the sauce. This blender is probably a little bit too big, honestly. But you know, we're gonna make it work. And it's gonna get loud in a second here, just fair warning. So hopefully, yeah, we're gonna put this guy up here. So we got blender top. Yeah, perfect. And we're gonna go in there with some cilantro. So we're using a half cup of cilantro, which is honestly just about the entirety of the top of the greens. I'll just show you sort of pop them right in there. It's usually just the tops. The stems are absolutely delicious in cilantro. Like normally I'd use them, but we're trying to make a sauce here, so we want it to be fairly smooth. So I'm not going to use them. But if I was making a salsa, like use the stems. They're really, really tasty. Absolutely nothing wrong with them. I'm actually just going to take a little bit more off the top here. We're just going to toss that right in there. We don't even need to really chop it up because we are using a blender. Get in there. Make our life easy. A half cup of cilantro. And then I'm going to actually zest my lime. I know it might not be in the recipe, but I was thinking, why do I have lime juice and not zesting my lime? So I'm going to use my microplane again, which I had out for my my nutmeg. And I'm just going to use this to take the rind off. And so a lot of people use a microplane like this. And that's not the wrong way to do it. It's really good if you're like plating on top of a dish or something like that. But if you're just trying to zest something for yourself, flip it over and you sort of just pull towards yourself. Am I doing it the right? Yeah. Pull towards yourself, and that zest comes right off and goes right into the back here and gets captured. So it's just ready to be used. So that's really nice sort of technique. It's way easier on your wrists as well, which is nice for any of us that might be getting into our older years. It just makes your life a lot easier. And microplane here, if you don't have one, you should go buy one. They are incredibly useful. I really like using them for ginger. What I'll do is I'll freeze the ginger whole, and then you just take it right out of the freezer. You don't even have to peel it. You just run it over a microplane like this, and you get really, really beautiful small pieces of ginger. Great for stir fry or sauces, adding a little bit of sort of flair and flavor. So great. So we got a little bit of zest there. That's just going to add a nice little bit of flavor. The zest of the lime or of most citrus is a little bit bitter, but it's also a little bit sweet, which again, we were talking about flavors earlier. It's going to be a really nice way to add in some extra sweetness, give it a little bit of sort of connection to the bitterness and this, and you know, and make our minds, or rather our taste buds, open up without having to use salt. You know, we can skip salt if we want to. So I've got juice of the whole lime, which is going to be about a tablespoon. It doesn't have to be exact, you know. I mean, it can be exact, but it doesn't have to be. This dish, more than anything else, this sauce rather, is kind of just a basic emulsion. You're taking a little bit of acid, you're emulsifying it with oil, and then in this case, we're adding some water just to give it some body, because we don't want it to be a dressing necessarily. We want it to be a little bit lighter, and we're also trying to hydrate our cashews, which is part of why we're putting water in there as well. So I have unsalted cashews. Surprise, surprise. Feel free, again, use salted cashews if you want to. It's just, for me, it's a personal choice. And I got to say, I really can't even tell the difference anymore. These are good cashews. I'm going to eat them all. All right. So cashews, half cup of cashews. And you want to kind of over measure this just because they're very chunky. And that's about right. So you want to go a little bit over. That's about a half cup. Maybe just like 3 more snacks right now. Those are so good. I don't know why they're so good. I love cashews, apparently. All right, great. So in here we have cashews. In here we have cilantro, we have lime, and we have lime zest. So the only thing we're missing right now is water and oil, a little bit of salt. I am going to put a little bit of salt in here just because this is a sauce. This is a dip. We want this to taste good. So I probably put about a half teaspoon of salt in there. It was literally just a pinch. But you need something in there to make this pop. It's got all the flavors that you need, but because we're using this as a dip, it needs to have some go and get up and go, you know. So I did add a little bit of salt in there, but so little that, you know, my doctor's not going to get upset at me, I promise, even if you're watching. All right, sweet. So I've got a third of a cup here. That's going to be for our oil and our water. We're going to start with our oil, and then we're going to add our water as we go. Or sorry, we're going to start with our water and add our oil as we go. So my water's going in. I'm going to go ahead and get my oil measured out. I'll probably put about half of the oil in there at first just to get it going. And then I'll sort of drizzle the rest in there as we go. And with a dry cup measure like this, you want to go right to the top and almost a little bit overflowing. And I'm using olive oil for this. Feel free to use a more neutral oil if you want the flavors of the cilantro to come through more. But I just love the olive oil for this. So, all right, so you've got the blender here. Let's get everything out of the way, make life nice and easy for us later. Do a little cleanup. So you guys can check this out. I'm hoping what I can do is just push this back a little bit so you guys can actually see the blender in action. You're not gonna be able to hear me here. And if I would, you know, be wary, I'm about to have a blender on right next to my mic, so I'm not sure what that's gonna do. But make sure you put your top on. Here we go. Then we're gonna start. We're gonna start on low, and we're just gonna sort of toast it up a little bit.
Hi, Chris. I don't think we can hear you right now. I think you got muted because your blender was so loud.
Sweet, that's it. It's done. So you guys probably saw me there. I was hitting the blender when it got bound up, and the reason you do that is you're trying to just there's usually an air bubble at the bottom. You're just trying to pop that bubble, and that'll help it to keep blending. I got muted from my blender. Thanks. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I appreciate that. All right, sweet. So now we've got this absolutely just like gorgeous green sauce, and this sauce is good for everything. You can put it on salad. You can do anything you want. If you put this on salad, I'd probably put a little bit of white vinegar in there too, maybe like a tablespoon or two, just to get it some more acid. It's just better for greens. It smells so delicious. It's just like absolutely perfect. So we're just gonna get this out into a little bowl, get ourselves ready for our plating. We got only a couple more minutes left on those, so we're pretty much ready to go once they come out. Got a cute little bowl here for our dipping sauce. I'll show you what it looks like. So it's very thick, so you want to kind of shake this, and that'll help sort of liquefy it and help you get it out of the blender. But you're just going to have to get in there with a spatula, to be honest. This is one thing that I kind of am always very sad about when I make sauces in a blender, is I can never get it all out. And I always want to, because it's always so dang delicious. And this blender particularly has like ridges. I don't know why. I know why they make ridges. They make ridges because it helps with the dynamics of the fluid, so that it doesn't bind quite as much. But honestly, when I'm trying to get all this delicious sauce out of here, it just gets in the way. But anyways, I'm a spatula freak. When I used to work in kitchens, I'd like see people put things in the dish pit being, you know, like where the dishwasher is and everything. They would like still have sauce on it. And I'm like, we worked so hard to make that. Like, why would you throw it away? And they're like, oh, I just didn't want to do any extra work. Or they had something else to do. And I'm like, you're just making work for yourself later, first off. And second off, like, why would you want to waste that? It's like one of our best sauces. You know, it's just like, worst case, like, just get some bread and leave it at your station so you can eat it later, you know? Anyways, I hate wasting things, if it hadn't become apparent to any of those who've been watching me for quite a long time. So we got this really beautiful green sauce. You can just dip your empanada in there. Don't go for ahead, double dip. It's fine. And families and friends. I'm just going to check this out and make sure it's good in case I need to mix anything else in there. I don't think I'm going to, though. It was pretty good when I tried it earlier. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's so good. Oh, okay. So it's creamy, fatty from the nuts, which is great. Cilantro is coming through really good right now. And cilantro is just going to keep coming through better and better as it sits. And that cilantro starts to bloom. And that little bit of salt we put in there is going to start to pull some of the flavor and moisture out. And it's just going to be absolutely perfect. I just want to kind of eat this with a spoon right now. All right, so I'm just going to kind of scooch this up here. We're pretty close on these. What I got 5 more minutes left. So we're going to sit with me, hang out for 5 minutes. I'm going to show you what these guys look like. Again, they're going to be a little bit paler than they would normally be if I had done an egg wash or even a paprika wash. That's okay. They're going to be cooked, and that's what we're really looking for here. Again, feel free to do the paprika wash. Feel free to do the egg wash if you want to. Obviously, that would make it not vegan. But it just, it's, for me, it doesn't feel necessary. They taste just as good, maybe even better this way. Cool. No questions at all tonight, guys.
No. I have a question for you.
Oh, yeah.
So I've never actually done the paprika wash before. But what if you were to, could you do it like with something like sweet, like use, like if you had like something sweet in there, use like a cinnamon or some other type of spice, like it?
Yeah.
It's like versatile, right?
Yeah, you just want something that has some sort of like sugar, which like cinnamon would be perfect because it's pretty sweet bark. Yeah. Maybe like don't use black pepper or something, you know? You want something that has a very small grain, almost a powder, so that it can be sort of emulsified with the water. And then you want something that has something that's going to actually brown in the oven, right? So when you cook it, it's usually sugar, what you're looking for, or protein, one of the two, or both if you got it. But yeah, but powder is also really like probably the most important thing. You could even do like a really, really like low concentration, like starch water. You do like water and a little bit of cornstarch or potato starch. Yeah. That's going to add, again, sugars essentially to the top that are going to brown. But you know, most of the time, it's not going to be that much better than just the dish. Obviously,
it doesn't add much flavor
because it's dark already, so it kind of already just adds color in its own sense. But I'm so excited to see what these look like.
I know when we had them in person a couple weekends ago, I was so shocked how like flaky and crispy they were from like baking in the oven. It almost tasted like something that was fried.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
And that's the oil working for us. I kind of knew that these were going to we were going to have this weird awkward time at the end where we're waiting for them to cook, but I wanted you to see them baked. I tried my best to try and like do it all in one and not like leave you hang and be like, that one time I did the lasagna and I had to be like, I'll cook this later and show you. It kind of made me a little sad, but I didn't want you to have to hang with me for an hour while I just talked about lasagna. So we made it work for that one, but um, it's kind of fun to like just it's nice to know that you can do this all in an hour, or in this case, an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, this is awesome. I know. I love the idea too. It's just like its own little sandwich and like pocket, it's like you can bring it anywhere. You can eat it. You can take it with you for lunch. You could also like, it's great, I think, to pack for like a kid's lunch.
Oh God, yeah.
I would love that.
The cool. You can even have them make it,
Or,
and then you can be like, I made this.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just so versatile. You can just bring them anywhere, or also just like have the whole dinner with like a side salad or something.
Exactly.
And
And
add some protein in it.
Uh, if you design your filling really well too, it doesn't even matter if you seal them. Like this filling, we could probably have just like baked open and it wouldn't have melted or gone anywhere weird. It just would have solidified into its own little dumpling. And that's because of the starchy potatoes. And a lot of times empanadas will have cheese inside of them for a very similar reason. If they do explode or they do unseal, it's not going anywhere. It's going to cook out for about 2 seconds before the cheese, or in this case, the starch sort of reseals it. And that's, if you have a nice filling, it really makes it so easy. You don't have to be stressed out about your kids. Oh no, that one's not sealed. It's like, it's fine. It's still gonna be edible. It's still gonna be delicious. They feel so proud of themselves too. So definitely, this particular dough definitely very kid friendly. It's so easy to work with compared to butter dough, and they have time to work with it too, which is a lot of fun, as opposed to butter where you're like, it's a race.
Yeah.
All right, we're close, guys. I'm gonna get my thing. I'm just gonna pull them out. I have a feeling they're gonna be done, but even if they're not, I'm gonna pull at least one out just to show you guys, because it's going to be done enough. Obviously you could cook these like in a lower oven. If I was doing like 350, I could cook them for up to an hour. The dough would get really, really hard and crispy, be more like a hand pie, something you'd like put in your pocket for the day kind of. And I'd do that maybe if I was using like a wetter dough or a wetter filling, something like mainly for sweet ones like apple pies and stuff and turnovers. You cook for a lot longer and slower. The inside's going to evaporate some of that moisture. The crust is going to get really hard, which is going to counteract the filling. And so yeah, that's kind of just like a different method, but it will work just as fine with this as well. Low and slow, high and fast. You can kind of do whatever you want. It's really versatile, really beautiful, really fun. And that's why I love it. So we're so close. We're so close. Because my oven will literally lose all of the last like couple seconds of heat that it needs right now to finish cooking these. But yeah, it's gonna be delicious.
With the sauce that you made, I mean, the color is amazing. Do you know if that color would stay if you kept it like overnight in the fridge, brought it out the next day, or
so
kind of turn like kind of brown?
No, so
the color is beautiful.
Unlike avocado, cilantro doesn't really oxidize in the same way. And we also did put some acid in here with the lemon or the lime. So yeah, like an avocado, this is usually a color you see from like an avocado sauce, and that would totally turn brown. But this should keep its color for a really long time. Cilantro doesn't really care. Whoops. All right, that was my timer, guys. Let's see what it looks like. Those are actually pretty good. I got a little bit of color on them.
And they puffed up beautifully.
And you can hear they're nice and hard, which is exactly what we're looking for. So I would never suggest doing this. You should probably, I'm actually going to put these back in just to give them a little bit more color. And I would never suggest doing this. I would never suggest eating them right out of the oven. You will burn your mouth, but I just got to show you what they look like. So we're going to do a little sort of crack, and then we're going to do a little dip. So fine, I'll use it. Oh yeah, I don't know if you guys heard that, but let me just see if I can get this near the. Where's the mic on this? Anyways, I think it's up here. Just listen. Could you hear that? Did you hear the crunch?
No.
Dang. My mic must be somewhere else. Anyways, so they're very crispy. And when I put my fork in there, it crunched. I'm going to try and show you the layers here. It's so hot.
Don't burn yourself, please.
Oh, I won't. Don't you worry.
We need you tomorrow.
Perfect. All right, so you've got this beautiful filling. You can see up here, hopefully, that there's a little bit of separation in the dough, which is what we're looking for. You know, nothing near as what you're going to get with like a proper butter dough. But I also rolled these. Whoops! I also rolled these pretty thin, so that also is going to take off. Oh no! Did I close it? No.
No, you're here.
I just actually close my window with my sticky fingers. Anyways, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful steaming filling. Nice, pretty thick bottom. And it might be hard to see there, but I can see there's like actual separation between the layers, which is really nice. And it's so crispy,
yum.
so flaky. And we'll do a little dip action here. Just show you.
I want some, Cheech.
Oh, hey, Sarah.
Hi, honey.
That's happy dance worthy. So good. All right, guys. That was it. We did it. Full success. Bunch of empanadas. They're in the oven just getting a little bit more brown just because I know they can take it. So I'm going to give them a little bit more anyways. But they're basically done at this point.
They look beautiful.
And they're ready to rock.
Delicious.
I definitely just lost my Zoom window, but that's okay. I think we're done anyway.
We still see you. Okay. Thank you, everybody,
Thank
for joining
you.
us.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Looks
Bye.
delish.
Next month.
Oh, I got it. Cool. All right, sweet.
Can't wait to make
Guys,
these.
make sure to check out the Eggertown Library YouTube. Just go to Eggertown Library YouTube and Google. You can see all these recordings. Hopefully, we're going to get some of the in-person recordings up there too. I'm not sure if that worked or not. Fingers crossed. And then make sure to check the newsletter for next month's Chef Look Cooks. Doing something special for my birthday. My birthday is the 7th, but it's not actually on that. It's like the Friday before, I think. But we're doing basically my favorite meal ever. But we're gonna do it Chef Look style, so it's gonna be wacky.
It's gonna be fun.
I made one last night, and it was delicious. So for something crazy and get out. I don't know, breakfast for dinner, but not. Yeah, I don't want to give away.
No,
I don't think I did.
I think it's kind of all any time of day. The perfect
meal.
Perfect food.
Like it. And it's kind of like 3 different things all in one that you can cook separately or cook together. And anyways, you're gonna enjoy it. Hope you guys see you guys then.
Can't wait.
All right, looking forward to it.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.